Welcome to Red, White, and Blue. I'm Gary Polland from the right.
And I am David Jones, and I am to Gary's left.
This week, an important and distinguished guest who you probably know quite well since he's been all over the media for the last 6 weeks, Mayor Sylvester Turner, who is one of the captains of our battle with the Harvey floods. And Mayor, we want to thank you for coming down.
Thanks
we
for
know
having
how
me.
hard you've worked. You probably, you have a 4-year term. My guess is you've already put in the 4 years with all the crises you've dealt with.
I seem like we've condensed 4 into 2.
So let's get to the important topic of
Sure.
the day. The Astros play tonight. If you're watching our show, you're not watching baseball, which is okay because you put it on DVR, you can do delay.
Yes.
But have you involved in any kind of wagering with the Los Angeles mayor?
We have a bet with Mayor Garcetti out in L.A. I mean, if by chance we should lose, I have to send him some Killing barbecue and some St. Arnold beer. And if by chance we win, and we will win, then he has to send me some Korean barbecue and some beer somewhere brewed in L.A., But I've kind of added another thing to it, and I want him to bring me the Korean barbecue, and then I'm going to take him to Killing's barbecue and pay for it.
Well, no, that's a good offer. That's exciting, David.
Well, the second most important thing that
Yes.
you have going for you, and by the way, are there any special concerns that you have for Houstonians during this 3-game World Series?
We're preparing. We want people to enjoy the games. We want to keep them safe. But Houston, we're used to these special events. We started off the year with the Super Bowl, then the NCAA Final Four championships. So we've had enough big soccer games in the city. So big events are nothing new, and we're taking every precaution to make sure that people are safe.
And one of those big events was called Harvey.
Yeah, Harvey was a huge
and
event.
Congratulations to you for outwitting the governor of Texas and getting $50 million. How did you snooker him?
Quite frankly, I think it was the right thing to do. I certainly appreciate the governor and the state for that advance. Hopefully, it won't be the last. But it certainly prevented us from having to even think about raising anybody's taxes. Look, it's going to cost a whole lot for this recovery. And we are still tabulating the cost. No one really knows what the final tally will be. And the support coming from the state, coming by the governor, was appreciated. But I'm glad to see that Houston got it. But let me just say to you, Harris County needs it. Other areas in the region need it. So we're not the only one.
And you're both you and the county, the city and the county, are actually buying houses.
We're in the buyout program. In fact, City Council just voted this week to put another $10+ million into the buyout program. We'll turn it over to the Harris County Flood Control District to buy about 57 homes in 3 city council districts. These are homes that flooded in 2015, and many of those same homes flooded in 16 and 17.
So they're just...
It was already a voluntary buyout program anyway, and there are certain criteria that you have to meet, but this was CDBG dollars, DR dollars from 2015 that we are putting on the buyout program. But there are probably thousands of homes that need to be subject to the buyout program.
City Councilman from Kingwood was on recently, and he said he had 5,000 houses in Kingwood that were seriously damaged or lost.
5,000 in Kingwood, but many of those homes flooded when water was released from Lake Conroe. So not necessarily from rainwater falling from the sky, but when the water was released from Lake Conroe, there were many homes that hadn't flooded previously that flooded this time.
All right, so is there a political consensus that's emerged among federal leaders, state leaders, and city and county leaders as to what we need to do to make sure Harvey doesn't come back next year?
Gary, what I would say to you, certainly during and immediately after the storm, the answer was yes. I think what Hurricane Harvey did do is that it eliminated the division. People weren't talking Democrat, Republican, what your religious affiliation, what your language, anything of that nature. I think the further we get away from Hurricane Harvey, the urgency may change, and that's when it may become more political. I hope not, because I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, where you live, if your home or business has flooded 3, 4, 5 times, you want it fixed. And you don't want to hear the rhetoric anymore. People are tired of the rhetoric. They want to see the shovels going. They want to see the bayous expanded. They want the 3rd reservoir. They want detention basin. They want to make sure that if their home needs to be bought out, where's the money? Or if their home needs to be elevated or raised, where's the assistance? This was one time, if you were a middle-class family, all of your stuff was on the curb, and you've exhausted your savings, and people need help, and they're saying, who's going to help me. So it wasn't just people who were already on the margins, and literally there were a lot of people who were already on the margins who are now in dire need. But this was a storm that did not discriminate, and it did not ask what your party affiliation was. So hopefully all of us at all levels, federal, state, local, will operate with a strong sense of urgency.
And in your conversations with citizens as you moved around the city, do you find any other issue more important in their minds?
No, this one is front and center, because literally, I mean, this wiped out people's possessions. This was not just about vegetative debris, trees, limbs on the curb, people's sofas, their refrigerators, their stoves, all their life's possessions. If they had a first floor, everything on the first floor on the curb. And in some cases, people who had a two-story home, the water even got up to that level. People on the roof needing to be rescued. So this is one that goes directly to the hearts and minds of people. This is what they're focused on. How do we get them back on their feet? How do they rebuild? And should we rebuild where we were? And if we can't give them some answers, that we're going to engage in mitigation strategies such that we are reducing their chances of being flooded again, then they have to decide, do we stay or do we go someplace else?
Well, the bayou, you mentioned the bayou, and the Public Works recently discovered that 300,000 gallons of sewage has been released into Buffalo Bayou.
Yes.
In the same story that reported that, they said that Public Works actually could not estimate what it would take to, dollar-wise, to fix that problem.
We are still assessing the cost. That's what I'm saying. It's too early right now to tell you, to give you a total cost on the recovery. But what I will say to you, while we do that, we need to start expending monies now on mitigation strategies. We need to expand the bayous, Project Braze, White Oak, Huntington. The cost of expanding those bayous, $311 million. Okay? So we know what it costs. A third reservoir, either on the west side in West Houston or Spring Cypress, cost of that is about $400 to $500 million. We need to do that. Detention basins, just like on the north side, Inwood Golf Course, that will hold more water there than the Astrodome. Okay, the cost of that project is probably about $35, $40 million. So there are things that if we do now, thousands of homes, not just hundreds, but thousands of homes will be taken out of the floodplain.
All it takes is money, right?
And golfers have to give up the game in some places.
Yeah. But right now, in that Inwood Golf Course, it's not used as a golf course. It's vacant property.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this.
Nothing
This
is
is an interesting question.
Sure.
State has a big rainy day fund of
$10 billion.
$10 billion or so. Would it be helpful if the state decided to kickstart these programs that you've talked about that everybody agrees we should be doing for $250 million? Do you think that would be a good start toward getting stuff done?
And I'm going to tell you the answer is yes, because let me tell you what the city has done. You know, I recommended for City Council last year that we borrow money from the Texas Water Development Board to kickstart Project Brace and to complete it. That's $47 million. That's not a financial responsibility of ours, okay? We're waiting on the money to come from the feds. But people, we can't wait any longer.
They're too slow.
So we borrowed that money, was approved a couple of weeks ago, $47 million, no interest. We are going to advance it over to the Harris County Flood Control District. They will get with the coordinator of engineers. That project will start being completed. They'll start finishing up construction in March of 2018.
How do you think people who are experiencing the loss that you're talking about, there's still many of them still here and are going to be voting on your bond matters in November?
We're competing for their interest because right now, you know, they're looking at that in their homes and they see sheetrock that have been pulled away, and they're looking at, okay, where do we, you know, about how do we get our homes refurnished? So that's number one on their minds, and I understand that.
So do you think that those voters? I mean, how are they going to distinguish? Or do you even want them to distinguish between monies that might be coming from some other place other than your bond to fix their houses? When they hear that it's not going to help them, then
but it will help them, and we have to educate them. That's why I'm here on your show today, is to help them. The reality is, as we recover and rebuild from Hurricane Harvey, the business of the city must go on. The pension obligation bonds, for example. That's the last piece to resolving our pension challenges that we've been facing for 17 years. The unfunded liability is now up to $8.2 billion with a B, as in boy. it was costing the city $1 million a day. Who pays for that? Taxpayers pay for that. So once we solve that problem, and the pension obligation bonds is the final piece, then we can move on.
I haven't seen the language of you.
I have.
If it says
and I do
if
have
it says $1 billion, I mean that might,
Yeah,
you know.
it's kind of scary.
It's-
But
it's
I
such a
would
big-
say,
yes.
and I want to say, first of all,
Yes.
you were not mayor when these reckless pension promises were made.
Started in 2001.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then you were not mayor when essentially your predecessors borrowed against the obligation of the pension plans and used it to fund current spending. You don't have that's not on your watch. So
Right.
you came in and you tried to solve the problem. My take, Mayor, is you did as good as you can.
We've solved
but-
it.
Well,
We've
not-
solved it pending the vote.
Okay. So
in
let's
this
take it down. Let's
election
take this
cycle.
down. Okay. You're going to give them $1 billion. But that's still money we owe
Old money. It's the money we already owe.
for the overpromises, at least in my
Well,
take.
underpayments.
Well, both.
From over the last 15 years, Gary, we have never paid the full cost of the pension.
And by
of
the way, I
pension system.
contrast the city's performance
Right.
pre-Sylvester Turner
Right.
with the county, which is fully funded.
Right.
And they fund it every year, but they're not as generous as the city plans became.
Well, and the pension reforms that we put in place are not as generous as they were before.
And you
and
make-
that's why
that's
that
progress.
And that's why that $8.2 billion unfunded liability will be reduced by $3 billion
Right.
without increasing your taxes or the
Well,
city infusing a great
that's
deal of
another.
cash.
We'll talk about that too.
Well, but-
and by the way, I'm not.
But
I'm
those
not,
are the Gary, those are the facts.
Okay, well,
Those-
here's-
that's
all right.
S&P, the three credit rated agencies, S&P,
They like
Moody, and
bonds.
Fitch. Well, no, they're not big fans of bonds, but they like the pension reforms
Okay.
that reduce the unfunded liability by $3 billion
That's
without
a plus.
raising
That's
your
a plus.
taxes.
Now, reducing unfunded liabilities
By $3 billion.
By $3 billion is a positive. So now we only owe $5.2 billion. But here's
That's
the problem with the plan. And again, I know you got as much as you could get. We still don't have a plan how we're going to pay off the $5.2 billion.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, Gary. You got to.
How are you going to fund it?
Gary, the way we treat it as a 30-year closed amortization.
On the $5.2 billion?
That is correct. You treat it just like your mortgage. You make the full payments annually,
Okay.
and as you make the payments, the costs go down.
No, I recognize
Okay.
that. But here's the.
You put in place a corridor. That's how you pay for it, Gary.
Well, the corridor is basically an opportunity to negotiate. But
no.
But I want to get
Gary,
to.
Gary, I helped design
All right,
it.
I
No
understand.
one knows it better than I do.
Well,
It is-
we could have had someone who says he knows as much as you,
Well,
but he's on another show.
Firefighters, firefighters
Are
don't-
against it. But
are
I did
against
want
it.
to talk. I did want to mention
Yeah.
the taxes because it depends on your definition of a tax increase, and I know there are differences. Some folks, like Senator Betancourt, say if your taxes go up year to year, that's a tax increase. Other folks say
Senator
if
Betancourt
we
said-
haven't, let me finish.
But Senator Betancourt supports this pension reform.
Well, we're having on the show next. We're going to find out what his real position is. But regardless, your position might be that it's not a tax increase unless you raise the tax rate. And that's an honest difference in philosophy, I'm not sure. But we know from the statistics over the last 3 years, property taxes in Houston have gone up. They average at 5.5%
Gary,
a
are
year,
you talking
which
about
means your
pension-
taxes go up.
Are you talking about pensions or are you talking about something else? You're
Well,
mixing. You're mixing.
He loves to mix
You're mixing.
apples.
Gary, you're talking about
You told
apples
me
on it.
taxes aren't going up.
But Gary, you are so far away from the pensions. Let's stay
Taxes
with.
go
Let's,
up.
let's stay away with pensions.
What was the
I
city
will
council vote on the
16 to 1.
Okay.
16 to 1, and that one who voted no is now supporting the pension obligation
Not
bonds.
sure why, but
Well,
yes.
you will not find one city council.
Here's my
members
suggestion
just
to you.
not
If the pension bonds go down, it empowers you to finish the deal you started because you got all you could get under the circumstances. Again, I'm not criticizing you, Mayor. You worked really hard and you moved the ball down the field, but I think if it goes down, you will be empowered to finish the job you know you need to finish.
Yeah.
In fact,
But we can disagree.
well, isn't
And we can disagree.
Yeah, but
isn't Gary's rationale somewhat distorted? But is it the worry of the city council who rejected your position on the tax rate the other day that if the voters found out that that they didn't get a break, or
You're talking about pensions?
well, we're talking about the tax rate that you're the vote
shipped-
of 15
he
to 2
switched
against.
subjects.
Yeah, well,
Right, see, that's what I'm saying. But let's finish on pension. 'Cause I want to say this: 2/3 of the Texas Senate voted for the pension reform, the pension package. 2/3 in a Republican-dominated Senate. 2/3 of the House in a Republican-dominated House supported it. The governor signed the pension reforms. The C Club is supporting the pension reforms. The C Club is supporting the pension bonds. The reality is, if we stay with the pension bonds, we eliminate that $1 million a day. Okay, we reduce that $8.2 billion unfunded liability by $3 billion, and we do so without raising your taxes or the city infusing a great deal of cash.
Well,
but when and what we're dealing with on the ballot is not new debt; it's old debt.
Yeah, but we haven't paid anything on it. And what's different,
You're
what
paying,
you're proposing
you're
now,
paying it every day at 8.5% interest.
so you're telling me out of the
day.
present budget, we're actually funding these pensions to the extent that you're going to do with
out,
this
out,
bond
out
loan?
of the present budget.
I thought it's just being accrued.
No.
That's why the debt keeps going
No,
up.
no. We've been for 15 years. We've been underpaying. Take for example,
I got
you owe $100, but you're only paying $50.
I understand.
That's why over the last 15 years, the city of Houston has borrowed from the police pension system
Right.
$750 million.
And used it to fund spending.
Other things. The city of Houston over the last 15 years has borrowed from the municipal employee pension system more than $250 million. What we are doing is simply paying back monies that we have borrowed, and we're paying it back at cheaper dollars. We're doing that. Now let's assume that people vote no.
Yes.
The $1 billion is already owed. It's owed debt. But if you vote no, those savings that we are deriving,
You have to go back to the table.
No, it doesn't go back to the table. You lose them.
But the
Because
city can't pay the money that's due. That's the problem.
The city can or cannot.
According to Senator Betancourt, and you may not trust his figures, but he said in order to pay off the pension debt, we're going to have to double or triple property taxes.
That's
long term.
absolutely false.
Okay.
Categorically, absolutely, definitively. Where's my camera? Definitively false.
we're gonna let-
And that's what. Come on, let's not make up stuff.
We're not.
Yeah, I mean, if people want to be against, be against. But let's be factually true and accurate and sound.
All right, let me
we
ask you
don't
this.
have to make up
You,
stuff.
let me ask you
you've
this.
used Betancourt quite enough.
Okay, but I actually have one other question.
Is Betancourt going to be
No,
involved
not
in
involved. Here's my question. Is it fair to say, Mayor, that your predecessors were irresponsible in failing to fund the pension every year?
But you know what I don't do? I don't look back. I'm not going to say that. What I am saying is that we are fortunate at this point in time that you have employee groups, you have the city council, you have the business community that have come together, working together to address and resolve our pension challenges.
All right, so we'll-
and that's a good
But
thing.
the firefighters opposed it.
Well,
though.
some of them oppose. I'm not going to necessarily say everybody
No.
opposes, because the reality is that the city has never borrowed from the firefighters' pension. We've always been
They
obligated.
wouldn't let you.
Well, true.
Not you, your predecessors.
But that's true.
Yeah.
But
They're funded.
but their unfunded liability is $1.5 billion, because the investments have not performed.
They didn't, and the city has no control over that.
But
do
no,
you?
in the reforms.
You do.
We lowered the discount rate from 8.5 down to 7.
Because the problem with the deal was there was a guarantee of a return, wasn't there?
That was a guarantee of return
That
of
was really
8.5%,
bad.
and so
Okay.
we've lowered that.
All right.
So what are these bonds going to do for people? And the city council, I think,
Proposition-
really hoping for. They really want those bonds to pass.
Proposition A of the pension obligation bonds. I encourage people to vote for the pension obligation
All right, I
bonds.
want to talk to you about
And
something
then
else after
B
this,
through E of the public improvement bonds for public safety. Our police officers and firefighters are driving on equipment that's old.
Actually, they got flooded cars, too.
Yeah, old. So that needs to be, public safety is my number one priority. So that's Proposition B. I hope people will support it. Our libraries and parks and public buildings, multi-service centers, those are also very important for the day-to-day operation of our city. The people in Ailey, for example, have been waiting on their multi-service center for 20 years. For 20 years. So as we recover from Hurricane Harvey, we also have to make sure that the lights stay on, the buses run on time, that people are secure and safe in their city. And that's what we do. That's what we're doing here. And may I add, no new taxes.
Okay, well, we'll see about that,
Not
Mayor.
going to raise your taxes. Not going to raise your taxes.
Not today.
Well,
But I
Well,
want
you're-
to, excuse me, Mayor.
yeah.
Excuse me,
Well, I
Mayor.
mean, no, the
I
mayor's
wanted to move to a
taking
new
his position
topic.
about
He's
whether or
clear,
not
and
he's-
look, I respect the mayor. He has a really tough job. One of the issues you dealt with head on, Mayor, to your
Yes.
credit,
Yes.
was the homeless crisis that we had in the
Yes.
city of Houston.
Yes.
And I wanted you to give an opportunity to report where we're at on that, because I know there have been lots of publicity over the last few weeks that the homeless problem is really out of control and dangerous.
Prior to August, we were making some headway. I announced back in April the 12th, I think, like a 6-point plan to address homelessness. The number one answer for homelessness is to put people in housing, okay? Permanent supportive housing, wraparound services, give them the things that they were needing. We had a temporary halt on that when the feds cut off the money for the vouchers, the housing vouchers. But then the city council, and I give a lot of credit to members of city council, we found 2.5, well, redirected, not found, redirected $2.4 million into the homeless program to make up for what the feds were not doing, and we restarted our housing program. It was starting to work. We were reducing the number of people even more off of our street and putting them in permanent supportive housing. And then we also, the last part of that is that if you provide people with housing, I go to you, I say, I got housing for you, okay? Or I can put you in a shelter. And if people say, well, I don't want that, then we were saying, but you can't have these big items out here, these sofas and all these chairs. Not that you can't stay, but you can't have all of these other things. It was at that point that the ACLU went into court, federal court, and got a temporary restraining order, I think in August, early part of September.
Against the city of Houston. And
saying to us, you cannot touch these encampments, okay? And once that temporary restraining order went into effect, the problem has more than doubled, in some cases tripled.
you have another lawsuit that you're involved with. In fact, there's both for and against arguments in courts on same-sex benefits.
Yes, yes,
Right, and
yes.
so what is the status of those lawsuits?
We
By the
have-
way, I assume that somebody is still not very happy that marriage equality was ruled on.
Well,
Right.
Right. We believe that the Supreme Court has spoken on that issue definitively, and we don't think that the Texas Supreme Court has the authority to go against the ruling of the United States Supreme Court. And so the city, we have appealed to the Texas Supreme Court in hopes that they will pick up that challenge and that they will clarify this issue once and for all. Until that time, we will continue to adhere to the dictates and the ruling of the United States Supreme Court and provide benefits to everyone, regardless of these distinctions that people are trying to make.
You know, Gary has a pet project of the homeless. My pet project is gun violence.
Okay.
Last weekend there was 4 dead,
Homeless gun violence.
4 dead and 10 wounded. In fact, somebody recently in your homeless area was shot and killed.
One was shot and killed in one of those encampments.
I don't need to tell you that.
Yeah.
Every day, you know, we see reports of gunshots and gun violence and
True.
death.
True.
You know, we are number 5 on the list of cities that reach 58. The number that was killed in Las Vegas reached 58 gun deaths. They're out of 20 cities. We're number 5 in the amount of time it takes for us to reach 58. And it's 118 days. There are 15 cities that do a whole lot better at protecting their citizens.
Okay, now make sure I understand that, Dave. Say that
Well,
one more time.
you know, what they did was they looked at,
We'll be
there
here
were
all
58 people killed in Nevada,
Okay,
right?
right.
All right, so they looked at 20 cities
Right.
and they said, when did they reach, how many days did it take them to reach 58 deaths?
Okay.
By guns.
Okay.
Okay, we're
We're a bigger
reached-
city, by the way.
we were number 5 and just
Right.
just behind, or just ahead of Detroit, actually. Detroit does a better job as far as gun violence than Houston.
But I would,
So one
okay.
solution.
So what's the question?
One solution. Oh, no, I'll ask him if one solution is
Okay.
to regulate better gun shows.
Okay, so you're suggesting why
Well,
not?
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
do you have any thoughts about
Well,
regulating gun shows?
What I will say, though, in defense of the city of Houston, when it comes to homicides, for example, we're about 18% lower than we were last year. Okay, so any one homicide is one too many. Okay, it's one too many. And prior to 2 weeks ago, our number, we were like 25% below. What we saw starting 2 weeks ago is the number spike, especially with domestic homicides, things that were happening inside people's homes. And that's very disturbing. And so what I will say to people, please do not live in bad relationships. Don't live in bad relationships. I mean,
Speaking of relationships, Mayor, you have a police chief.
Yes,
And
Chief
Acevedo,
Acevedo,
very
yeah.
personable. We've had him on the show, but
very
my
proud of
question is,
him.
does he speak for the administration? Because this guy's taking public policy positions on everything under the sun.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
wondering who was mayor, quite honestly.
Well, let me just say this. He does an outstanding job. He's very community-minded and he's very community-oriented, and he believes in community-oriented policing. He is a chief's chief, okay? He does take charge, and he's out there front and center. And quite frankly, for the city of Houston, he's the right person at the right time.
But he doesn't speak for you, does he, on public policy
Well, of course,
issues?
of course he speaks for me. Everybody that works for me in part, they are representative of me and an agent of the city.
Okay, so
Well,
it's
in the last minute, you know, you can tell Gary whether or not you agree with his position as far as he's not going to have his city of Houston officers be ICE agents.
Well, we're not going to be ICE agents. I've said that.
But we're honoring detainers, aren't we?
Well, we've always done that.
Okay.
Okay, but the point is, we're not going to profile. We're not going to be agents, ICE agents. We're going to do our job. I mean, we continue to be a city where public safety is number one. Okay, we want people to report crimes. We don't want people to be fearful of law enforcement. We're on the same team, and we ought to be moving in the same direction.
So is that what SB4 does?
What
Or there's a difference on that
what
too?
What SB4 does is that it does subject people to profiling. It does say to individual police officers, irrespective of the chain of command, you go out there and you operate as an ICE agent on your own. Okay?
Gary apparently does not know what 1 minute means, but you do. And
well, he could go on for another half hour with the mayor.
We want to thank you, Mayor, for being here.
Thank you.
I want to thank you.
And we want to remind everybody to
Thanks
catch
for
the mayor
coming.
on Houston Matters on Monday at noon on 88.7 FM. And we will see you next week right here with Red, White, and Blue.